Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman is both kind of a miracle that it got made, is good, and also is part of the DCEU. It's kind of astonishing that it actually worked, because that was kind of what I had been worried about ever since they announced that they were going to do a Wonder Woman movie, as there has never been one before. I think there's a lot riding on this movie. There hasn't really been a very successful female superhero movie. There hasn't been a superhero movie directed by a woman pretty much ever. I think a lot of what Patty Jenkins does with Wonder Woman is really smart, because we've had X amount of 20-some million origin stories. Pretty much the superhero genre is as much known for origin stories as it's known for having, you know, superheroes in them. It's pretty much almost every first film has to feel like a very stagmented genre, rules plotted out kind of a origin story throughout it. And Wonder Woman doesn't feel that way at all. Now, Patty Jenkins, I think her direction in this, obviously she did Monster, but for a while she's been in TV, and she almost feels like a TV director in terms of it doesn't completely do away with the superhero genre. It's very much within the superhero genre. It's very much part of the superhero genre and using tropes and such within it, but it changes the focus, and instead of being a superhero fit into an origin story format, which we've seen a lot from particularly like Doctor Strange or even Deadpool or things, and springboarding off of that, feels like Wonder Woman is the best origin story for Wonder Woman. It's not the kind of origin story for any superhero that you usually have. It is the best for Wonder Woman, and it feels like what a lot of studio directors used to do in the classic Hollywood era is they would find a genre and put their own spin on it, but do it in a way that they're still delivering the kind of product that the studio will like and give them more jobs and such. And that's kind of what Patty Jenkins did in this. It's actually a little more subversive than actually changing everything and things like that. It's secretly subversive, which I think is actually a lot cooler. Wonder Woman has a lot of like weighty backstory and crazy things that maybe necessarily people don't know about as much as they know her. She's a big icon. She's probably one of the most well-known superheroes of all time, but how many people actually knew her origin story before going into this? So you kind of are fighting a lot of things in this, and Patty Jenkins does a really good job, not at how she adapted the Wonder Woman character onto the big screen, but also how she found a way to take, like, she's coming from this Greek god thing and this crazy island and all this, you know, backstory and things like that just to get to the Steve Trevor thing. And although people have complaints with that opening part, I really don't, because knowing the story of Wonder Woman, that stuff could really weigh down the movie. And this film isn't really about setting up the entire world of Wonder Woman as it is setting up the character of Wonder Woman. That's kind of what's so important about the superhero genre, and that's kind of what's so interesting about the superhero genre right now, is that they're basically like to introduce you to the character. They know the character is what you're going to see through X amount of sequels and spin-offs and cameo appearances and team-ups and everything like that. And the main importance to their continued cinematic universe is that you care about this individual character, and through Wonder Woman you definitely do that. And I think that's something Patty Jenkins did very well, because she understood how to move this film. This film very much moves. It felt like a breeze, and it's 2 hours and 20 minutes. It's gonna feel like a really long summer movie, and it didn't. It felt like a lot of fun. I don't think this movie's perfect at all. Like, I don't think that. I know some people are going a bit too far with their praise of it, but I still think it's like a really, really good kind of genre superhero movie, and shows like what a really talented director could do with that genre and play with that genre and make that genre perfect for the character they were adapting. What I'm saying is this is the perfect way you could probably make a Wonder Woman movie while using and acknowledging the genre that she probably exists within. But also part of that, I think, is because of the screenplay written by Alan Heinberg, who is a comic book writer who wrote Young Avengers and various other comic books, and bringing in a comic book writer to write a comic book movie makes a lot of sense to me. Frankly, I don't know why it doesn't happen more. It doesn't mean it's automatically good or something, but I think that's the kind of logic you need throughout this, and kind of bring that logic within it, and particularly like respecting the source material while also like having a lot of fun with it, which I think this film does very well. Now, Gal Gadot is obviously the star of this, and kind of, you know, obviously we knew about her before we knew about her being in this movie, and we saw her in Batman v Superman, and clearly she was like the best part of that whole mess. This is when she's proven to us that she can be a star. Although I do like her in the Fast and Furious films, she's not like charisma and acting wise someone who I thought of who could really pull this certain thing off, but after seeing this film, I think she's going to be an amazing star. You know, she was good at doing the playfulness of this character while also doing the fierceness, doing the battle scenes, doing like everything that Wonder Woman needs to do. She does impeccably well. She has such visual eyes to her that she can really emote very well, whether she's about to go into battle, whether the love scene she has with Steve Trevor, all of that comes through her eyes, which is something that I don't think a lot of actors can do as well as Gal Gadot can do. And she has such an interesting stunning and amazing look that I think it kind of adds to the specialness of Wonder Woman and what Diana can do and how like amazing she is. The thing with doing these superhero movies is you have to show that you are this kind of amazing legend type of character, and Gal Gadot is really good at that. When I was a kid, little kid, and like the DC characters, they were always kind of, other than, you know, when Batman got dark and shit, they were always kind of goody goodies. They were better than us as humanity. Marvel was us. They were characters who were humans turned into these great super beings, but in DC they're like the Greek gods. They're better than us, like Superman, Wonder Woman, and so forth, but they also want to do the right thing. They stand for good. The character of Wonder Woman in this works so well as opposed to the other DCEU movies, is it's almost like they're standing in contrast to what we know of those DC characters, which honestly is not something I liked. I mean, I don't know that Supergirl show that well. I've only seen a few episodes, but the ones I have, it shows like kind of the fun and the kind of adventure and almost the kind of naivete to these characters, which I think this film played with really well, and I think Gal Gadot had a lot of fun with as an actress, and I really like that portrayal of it. I kind of wish more superheroes did that. I think this is kind of an interesting film because as much as I think the DCEU things are trying to play off Marvel and do a juxtaposition towards it, I think Wonder Woman went, oh, fuck that. Like, let's take on the colorfulness. Let's have fun with it and do the best one for this character. And I think sometimes you can fit certain characters within structures for studios and producers and extended universes, but other times you kind of need to give them their own kind of a movie. And Wonder Woman needed that to happen, and probably should have happened at this point anyway, but also Wonder Woman needed her own unique movie as a character. And I think exuding that through it really worked for this movie. And it was something that Gal Gadot was ready to do as a star, because really in these films you need a really good performance. You need that performance so you'll go through all these other films with them. One of the biggest successes of the Marvel universe is that Robert Downey Jr. was as good as Tony Stark, so you'd want to go through him and you were like, oh, that's Tony Stark, I know him, I like him. And in this, I think Gal Gadot is probably the first one in the DCEU where I'm like, I will see Justice League mainly for her. I don't really have much connection other than her, but she is that connection, and she's something that this universe sorely needed. And instead of being dour and bummy and kind of like this dude rock kind of Pearl Jam type of thing, you have Wonder Woman come in with like an amazing breath of fresh air. I even liked how they did this whole fish out of water thing, which Gal Gadot did really well and almost made her more relatable. I like that she likes babies and ice cream. They're little critiques on things people just absolutely love, and they're just like throwing out one-liners, but they nail it. Like her putting on the glasses, like even like she's not the most beautiful woman you've ever seen. Let's throw more shade at she's all that, as well as the fact that all these things make her more relatable and they were fun, and it could have all these different tones without it, and it didn't feel inappropriate. First with these Greek god things, and then this fish out of water thing, and then we're a fun World War I movie. I never thought I'd see a fun World War I movie. I don't think Paths of Glory or Wings or The Big Parade or All Quiet on the Western Front weren't exactly fun, and they used the World War I setting really well. I've noticed that since World War II's kind of been really overdone, and it didn't feel as right to have Wonder Woman fighting like in Iraq or Afghanistan or something, that they needed to pick a different war, and certainly because World War II was around when she was created, that would be more of a natural fit. But using World War I made it even more unique, frankly, and added to an interesting take on it. It's probably similar to what Kong Skull Island did. Is like, well, who's making like a Kong Vietnam movie? Let's do that instead of like, we've done this, we've done that, what else can we do? And there's such a rich tapestry of history, might as well have fun with it, and I think they really did that. Also a war that like seemed like you can't cross the no man's land, things of that nature. They don't really get into World War I and maybe like crack a history book or see one of those World War I movies I mentioned, or Wings. Did I mention Wings? You should see that too. This doesn't really do that, but it's not even really trying to. It's kind of just a setting, sort of like Kong Skull Island in that way. It's just like kind of an interesting setting. It doesn't really necessarily need to be that. Could be any war. I think sort of what this does is does Captain America the First Avenger and Thor at the same time, but kind of also does its own thing. It's not just those two movies. I think it's probably better than both of them, and it's definitely one I probably want to watch over both of them, especially that Thor movie. Chris Pine has really been getting better and better as an actor and more interesting as an actor since Hell or High Water and this. I've always liked him as Captain Kirk. I think through Hell or High Water and this, what his best instinct is as an actor is playing off of someone. Because when you think of Hell or High Water, notice that most of the things written about that movie, he was like mentioned third after like Ben Foster or about Jeff Bridges. And in this, one of the great instincts as an actor is knowing how to play off of other actors. And his chemistry with Gal Gadot is frankly amazing in this. It's probably one of the most charismatic performances he's ever done since the first Star Trek film. It's like one of the first times I'm like, wow, Chris Pine did a really, really good job. As well as I actually like seeing Ewan Bremer, who I mentioned in Trainspotting 2. I wish I'd see him in more movies. And he has that wonderful, unique face. I liked her whole group of like kind of gang of World War I guys. I actually would love to see them throughout the film. You know, it's funny, as much as this film was not focused on maybe necessarily like building them up for future movies for obvious reasons, I actually really wanted to see them in more stuff. I like seeing Lucy Davis, obviously, from The Office, and for more people it seems Shaun of the Dead, but whatever. How did did you have Etta Candy in a movie and she doesn't eat any candy? Like, that was a really easy one shot of her like eating too much chocolate, or just have her like, how did you not do that? That's like probably my biggest complaint, is like Etta Candy doesn't have candy. Not cool, guys. Not cool. I like how this film still plays in the DCEU. You can still feel the Zack Snyder-ness, as this is, I guess he's directed half of them, and they do that with the Greek god stuff. They felt very Zack Snyder, but the rest of it felt like very Patty Jenkins, but playing within that kind of darkness and things. I found this film just moving very well. It flowed very well. Something that a lot of movie blockbusters don't do, and especially superhero movies. It feels like I'm seeing that genre all over again, and I didn't feel that way until the very end, and at that point it felt like I was watching yet another superhero movie, and that didn't feel as exciting. But when this film plays in and goes throughout these various things and plays with tone in ways that like honestly shouldn't work, Patty Jenkins is obviously an experienced enough of a director to get to work. It felt very self-assured in what they're doing and playing within the genre, while also using it, which is something like the superhero genre. It feels like it's in a weird place. You have films like Logan, which are obviously trying to get away from it and build more on the character. You have films like Deadpool, which are obviously using it and making fun of it at the same time. Whereas Wonder Woman understood like you have to use the genre to make your character, and I think that's honestly the most important thing when making a superhero movie. It's not necessarily trying to make the most successful one or biggest one or one that blows people's minds and things, and frankly that's a lot of fun, but I think what Patty Jenkins did is made the best movie that you could for Wonder Woman, and you could tell this film meant a lot to her. Certainly there were only a few times I think it really fell under the whole superhero genre-ness of it, and that was honestly, well, I was so in it at that point it didn't bother me. I've heard some people, it doesn't even strike them at certain points. Certainly this film has a lot going for it. You know, if you're a woman seeing this film, it represents a lot more than it probably does to me, frankly. I guess my role in this, or whatever, is to just talk about it as a movie, not talking about what it represents and what it represents to have a female director and everything like that. Although I think that was very powerful, and it obviously has a certain power to that as well, but I think as just a simple superhero movie, it's probably definitely the best the DCEU has done, and it shows kind of an interesting way and reminds me of why this genre works when it does work, and when the genre doesn't work, it's when you're totally misunderstanding the character that you're making the movie about. That hasn't really ever seemed to work. A lot of directors think it does, and that's never worked. Patty Jenkins obviously understood. You have to effectively make a good movie for the character of Wonder Woman, but it's also a really great single kind of standalone movie. It's part of the DCEU, and they make sort of veiled references at the beginning and the end or wherever, and those are like, yeah, sure, fine, I guess, but honestly what I'll remember about this is the kind of standaloneness, the adventure. It felt very memorable, it felt exciting, it felt fun, and I think that's one thing we came into the superhero genre for this escapism fun, but also the power of Wonder Woman, and seeing her do like kind of, you know, some cool action sequences, which I guess weren't as unique, frankly, in some regard. Some of them were shot really beautifully in terms of the bullets shooting off her shield and things like that, but then other parts didn't feel as amazing, like, you know, the slow-mo stuff. But honestly, a lot of the cliches of it didn't feel as much cliches because of the richness and the excitingness that was going on throughout this movie. I think Wonder Woman is probably one of the best genre superhero movies at a time when the genre needed to play and kind of move away from itself than it did. Wonder Woman kind of goes within it and makes a really rich character kind of a movie in the way that that works best. It's both kind of using the Marvel experience while also understanding how to use one of DC's best, most recognizable characters to make a hell of a good time at the movies, and probably one of my favorite summer blockbusters this year so far. So if you have seen Wonder Woman and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.